So I've been wanting to do a video on EMDR for betrayal trauma. So I'd never heard of EMDR, and when I suffered betrayal trauma, I started to hear about it, and it was very highly recommended, and it was just going to help you kind of get past triggers and intrusive thoughts and flooding and kind of a lot of things that I was dealing with during the beginning of discovering an infidelity that my husband had. So I did a lot of Google searches to kind of what EMDR was, to kind of understand what it was. And now that I've done it, I've done a lot of other things too though. Like I've done so much work in this. So I found this out 16 months ago. And in those 16 months, I've just done a lot of work. But EMDR by far is one of the biggest contributors to probably me getting a lot better and being in a better place. And so sometimes when I'm in groups, whether on Facebook or Twitter or somewhere, they'll say, what is EMDR? Can you explain that? And so I wanted to do a video on it specifically for betrayal trauma, because even when I YouTube EMDR, there's great videos out there, but they're never specific to betrayal trauma. And so I want to just kind of share my experience and how it worked, and in hopes that somebody else maybe going through this can see how it may benefit them, or it might be something they're interested in, because it definitely made such a world of a difference to my life. So EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So the way I understand this, and I'm not a doctor or anything, so this is just how I understand it. So during the day, any given day when you're living your life, you're at work and maybe you get off and you go to the grocery store or you go shopping, and then you come home and you have dinner with your family or with your friends. And that night when you go to bed, our brains do this work to kind of take everything we've done through the day and kind of process that and kind of dump out like anything maybe that's not important, store things into our memory. And so if you guys have even heard of REM sleep, it's like rapid eye movement sleep. And so it's kind of like your eyes are just kind of going, but what's happening is your brain automatically, because that's the way we're wired as people, are taking your daily experiences and storing them into your long-term memory, and also getting rid of anything maybe not important or what we don't need. So what ends up happening when you end up developing betrayal trauma, it's very similar to PTSD, because if you look at the symptoms of PTSD, they're pretty much identical as far as everything you experience. Betrayal trauma is said to be maybe like you suffer it for less of a time, but I don't know how I would be today if I hadn't done EMDR to recover from the betrayal trauma. So anyway, what I've learned is that during a betrayal, or during the traumatic experience, so on D-Day, and some of us have more than one D-Day, I did, but there for me is a specific day that just, I feel like my whole world fell apart. Like the rug is pulled out of under me. It was just, I don't even remember parts of that day. I remember some parts, so I'm sure some of you can relate to that, because that day is just so burned and singed in your mind. Some of the days following that, I don't remember everything that happened, but I definitely know, just based off everything I've studied and looked into now, it was definitely betrayal trauma. So what happened to me that day, and probably most likely to a lot of people, is something so traumatic is happening that your brain starts, it goes into fight or flight mode, or survival mode, which is fight, flight, or freeze. And when this is happening, now your amygdala is in charge, which is like your reptilian brain, some people refer to it. And there's some great videos on YouTube where you could kind of look up like how all that works, like PTSD and how each part of your brain reacts during this traumatic event. But what I've learned is at that moment, your brain is just pumping cortisol into you. So kind of the same way maybe when you're in an accident and they say, oh, adrenaline is just pumping through someone. So cortisol is happening. And what happens with that cortisol is the part of your brain that like kind of takes things that happen to you through the day and then stores them back here. It kind of builds a wall there. So like now what's happening in that moment with all that dump of cortisol isn't able to make its way into your long-term memory. So kind of the days following the betrayal, the months following the betrayal, everything is very new. It's like it's happening right now, like right this minute, it's happening. This is why people like with PTSD, maybe they've been in a really bad car accident, when they get in a car, they're just very jumpy and very scared. It's because that event happened to them and they weren't able to process it. So even at night when they slept, you know, it just, their brain never was able to process it. So that then creates the PTSD. And so what EMDR does is you see a licensed therapist who is specialized and has the tools to do EMDR, or like has a license for that. You can't just go to anybody, but online there are some things of like how you could do it yourself, but I would still suggest maybe going to somebody just to get an idea of like how it works. And I'm not saying you can't do it on your own, because even now I still do some things kind of by myself, but not the way like she was doing it. So anyway, so the point of EMDR is to go in and see someone licensed who knows how to do this, and they actually will, you can either follow their fingers, like they'll do this kind of motion, and as you're talking about your traumatic experience or re-experiencing it or whatever's happening, you'll be following their fingers. And so it's almost like manually doing what your body naturally does at night during REM, but you're unable to because of the trauma. So EMDR is now a tool that people have made. Well, there's all this stuff behind it. Like this particular person thought of it because she was, I read some parts of it, so I don't know the whole story, but I know that while walking, she kept looking at trees left to right and realized that she was feeling more relief from things that were really stressful to her. And then I think through studying, she realized it. Anyhow, it became this, it's a whole thing, and it's really proven to work. And I hope I'm not giving wrong information about all the facts, because I'm not a facts person. I'm not even a YouTuber on the regular. Like, I just want to do something that hopefully helps other people in this situation. So please don't be super mad if I got all of like some of this wrong. So anyway, another thing that she did for me, which this is what I preferred. I didn't really do the eye thing because I cried like a lot during it. She did tapping like on my knees. So she would actually get a tiny little chair and sit almost directly in front of me and just tap on my legs as we talked or went through it. One time towards the end of my treatment, she had gotten this new tool where I had these like headphones on, but I could still hear her. It was such a light noise. And anyway, you hear a beep, 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 beep. And so that's kind of happening. There were times like if I was standing up to do like something maybe against the wall, like I had a lot of anger, which some of you might have. And one thing that really worked for me was just getting a pillow and pressing it up against the wall and like just squeezing it and pushing up against it. And sometimes if I did this in her office, she would tap the back of my shoulders like as I kind of talked it through what I was going through. So there's just, I think it's the alternating motion is the point of EMDR. There's something about alternating the left and right side or getting that kind of a kind of going. So anyway, that's kind of what EMDR is and how it's supposed to help you with any traumatic experience. So I hope that information helps, and then I can share a second video that would be maybe like a part 2 where I'll just talk about my experience with EMDR if anybody's interested and how it worked for me. I do want to say that if you don't understand betrayal trauma, amazing video that I share with so many people that literally changed my life. I've probably watched the videos myself at least 25 times, but it's A Fair Recovery Betrayal Trauma with MJ Dennis, and there's a part 1 and a part 2, but she just nail on the head of how betrayal trauma feels, what's going on with a person. It's so amazing too, because I think when this first happens to anybody, you do go through a lot of things of like, why am I acting crazy, or why am I being like this? And she really puts into perspective what has just happened to you. And even though the word trauma is such a big word, it truly does happen to you. Like your whole world falls apart. So those videos are really great to watch. And again, not a big YouTuber, so I don't even know how to link those to my thing. Sorry, but just look them up. They're easy to find. Okay, so I'll work on part 2.